The author's heart skips a beat as he feels a thread go slack. It was over after all. In the end, it would appear that nothing seems to matter. He can only manipulate the threads so much before they gave. And like a great shock or a ship undergoing a massive wave, it righted itself. And so it was that one of the chosen fell for the final time. The author pondered, wondering if another would take up the crystal heart anew. Even he didn't know, truthfully. His omniscience, if you could call it that, was actually fairly limited. He mostly relied on his sight, though that was getting harder in his old age, and his breadth of experience, both on the ground and watching from on high. It was surreal sometimes, watching a past form of the future take steps you never thought you would. Stresses beyond stresses can twist a man into something he himself would never recognize, and that before the whisperings of the enemy could come into play. The author sketched with chalk into the remaining half of his page. It was white and black, for now at least. His colored chalk would be added later to give definition to the form that he could breathe into true life. But for now, a pale imitation would do. A blade, one whose sheath was lost but destined to return. To combine it was necessary, and the price would be beyond imagining. He did not look forward to that eventuality. He had never encountered an iteration that managed to divine the secret, the counterweight of it. For only when the blade is bathed in the leaves shall its undrawn blood be washed away. The author began to tire increasingly quickly now. He would have to rest, eventually. He didn't know what would happen if he did so during an iteration. The last one was shorter than anticipated, so he felt he didn't need to rest. He continued to draw with the chalk rather than with words. The world is a pearl with 9 figures in it, each of a special kind. 3 were related to 3 which were unrelated to the other 3. He then smiled, contented in his play on words. Above it, a black fanged hand flexed fingers with strings tied to it. Threads, with which it manipulated the world. Its threads were smaller but numerous. On the opposite lay another hand, white and as pure as freshly fallen snow. The bloodstains would come later, of course. Blood in the snow was ever the key, for it was the origin. The author felt nauseated thinking of it. Its threads were few, but thick and strong. No matter how you might try, though, once your threads were severed, your control was limited. The light had long ago given up direct intervention. As its influence waned, so too did the enemies. For a time, at least. It seemed an effective strategy reduce intervention and slow the spread of entropy. When they had thousands of sparks left, it seemed wise indeed. Now, with a single flickering flame to their name, it was they who were revealed to be the fools. The author finished his sketch and added sparks of color. Only a little, of course. There wasn't much real color left in the world. Now, the people lived in shades of gray. They hadn't seen real color in generations upon generations. People no longer had any real faith in those who led them. But then, unlikely as ever, lights began to twinkle in the small corners of the world. A young child, rescued as the last survivor. A line thought lost, saved at last. But the price was greater than thought of desire. A young girl, trembling and alone, began a prayer of desperation. She stood before the cliff, the undead writhing beneath, waiting to devour her flesh despite her need. So she did what all do when alone and desperate. She called out to the sky, a plea, a wish, for truth and that of something new. And so it was in the darkness where she knelt, she heard the words of light whisper, and upon her breast she felt hope dwell. Beneath her feet a small shine, true proof of an existing divine. In her eyes tears fell of joy, so she crossed the chasm reunited by her people and ran to tell all of the girls and boys. Even now, days turn to months, her light doth glow beneath the deepest black of the sky, and so word spreads of deeds done, even though they know not why. And so it was before and shall be again. The people began to learn what they had known once and then. A new wind rises in the east and of yore, to bring forth rain in winter, and if need be, dispose of the four. And so people all abound, as they heard stories tell, they would not reply as if the news was new. They would instead remember hearing of it before, and now wonder who. So quiet and slick, the changes meld to what is now and then. A great lever had been pulled, and people are beginning to remember when. Some things we are not meant to know, this much is obvious for we who are laid low. Still, that wind continues to rise and sweep the sky, as these tales seem familiar, even though they know not why.